Welcome to the Build Your Brave Career podcast, where we flip the script on the tired stereotype that women in and around the tech industry have to be stressed out, overworked, and underpaid. I'm Nicole Trick-Steinbach, the International Bravery Coach and your host. Forget what you've been taught. Bravery is not a personality trait available only to the brash. Bravery is a skill, and you already have it, which is great because building the skill of bravery is the most powerful way to creating the career and life you really want. As you build your brave, you will stress less, work less, and then earn more. This podcast will help you do just that. Let's dive in. Building your brave career is super rewarding. It's also very confusing. Our guest this week personifies both of those. Our guest is Rebecca Walter. Rebecca Walter is a consultant and self-employed human who's building a brave career filled with interesting opportunities right at the intersection of systems improvement and individual human growth. After a long, consistent, solid, successful career in education, primarily as a school counselor, she chose to leave her full-time education job with the purposes of transitioning careers. She has created a diversified portfolio of work that continually feeds her curiosity and love of learning. She is currently working as a contract project manager, a college advisor for first-generation college students, a server at her local restaurant, and yes, again, a part-time school counselor. Rebecca is the epitome of a multifaceted career growth phase. And you're going to hear in our conversation that that was a bit of a surprise. As you are listening to this conversation and gathering all of the inspiration from Rebecca, I want you to pay attention, to allow yourself to reflect on the stories you got about career success and what you actually desire for your unique, brave career. That's what we do around here. So let's get into the conversation. Rebecca, I am so excited to have you, and we're just going to dive right in.
Excellent.
So,
happy to be here on my first podcast appearance ever.
I love that. So that's already a shout out to our listeners. If you want to be on this podcast, please let me know. First time people are always welcome. All right. So I know you pretty well.
Yep.
And I know that in our community, you have been, I've heard from other people, other clients, that you have just been a wealth of wisdom and advice and support. So which of the career advice do you want to share today? I'm like so nervous. I'm so excited about this. All right.
Why are you nervous?
Because it's exciting. It's like skited. It's like the good nervous, you know? So
Activated.
Like, oh yes,
I've heard someone say activated, which I like. I think that's a nice reframe.
Oh, I love that reframe. Yeah. Activated. Yeah. All right.
So my brave career advice, I'm going to actually start right off by giving a shout out to one of your other former clients, Caroline, who I talked to before you and I started working together. Mm-hmm. And I remember listening to her podcast episode a long time ago. And she was talking about how, like, the night before she Googled, what's the definition of brave? And one of the things that came up for her was a quote, I think it was from Brene Brown, or I think that's who she heard it through. And that quote was, belong to yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And that has really been the theme of my career path in the last year. And you know, another way that I think we often say it is be the CEO of your own career, right? Like the loyalty comes to yourself first before it comes to anyone else. So I would say that is my big, brave career advice for women whatever kind of career you have for yourself, whatever format it takes. I think you can hold that mindset regardless of the structure of your professional life.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I love how our webs come together.
I do
Caroline
too.
Santinelli will be linked in the show notes for sure. Brene
And she's a
Brown.
delightful human and also a
Yes.
former educator. So she and I had some things in common that obviously very much spoke to me.
Yes. And what's
Yeah.
really neat about the skill of bravery and like choosing to be the CEO of your career or having a business of one, as some people are calling it, is she's actually shifted her career again since we made that podcast episode. And it's such a vibrant example, both of you, all of you, right? Very, very cool. All right. So I have a hint of what your brave story is.
So like
Now that
all of
we
our
know.
work together, Nicole,
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
story the entire last year of my life.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you really transformed so much in the last year. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you want to share it?
I'm going to have to go chronological because that's how my brain works.
Me too. Me too.
So, for listeners who don't know me, I have had a long career in education, starting right out of college and then leading right up until up through the COVID pandemic and up until last year, 2023. I started as a teacher and I worked in a couple different settings. And then I moved into school counseling and I did that for a decade. And, the last few years of my, I would say like full-time education career were hard for a variety of reasons. So there was COVID, which was like global trauma for everyone. And
Yeah.
I think school is one of the places where we felt that a lot because we were absorbing all the concerns of our kids, of our community, of society. Like, what does it mean for the children? And those of us working in the field were holding a lot of that.
Yes.
So that was super hard. And then the last few years of my career, my role shifted a little bit and I took on a piece of leadership in my building. So I was doing some professional development coordination and teacher mentorship and I loved that. I love supporting my colleagues. I loved helping them with their work. There was a lot of coaching involved in that role, right? As we were all figuring out like, what does post-pandemic education look like? And I felt like I was able to bring a lot of structure to some things happening in my school that didn't have a lot of structure. And that was really deeply satisfying for me. And it came with some extra stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working with a leader who was just a hard match for me in terms of personality and just kind of the way that we worked.
Mm-hmm.
So, those things were kind of building up and I was feeling like, do I want to keep doing this? How's it all going? And then in 2022, my dad died suddenly. I lost him in an accident. He was in a motorcycle accident and he was pretty young. He was 63. Yeah. And so, just all of these kind of traumas on top of each other and being in a single career for a long time, which I think just comes with its own sort of, built stress. I found myself in the fall of 22 in a place where I needed to take leave from work for my mental health. And I took 8 weeks off. And when I had some distance, I realized that it was time for me to do something different. I needed to make a shift because I wasn't happy anymore. And I was just kind of overwhelmed in my work. And I have a friend who often says like 10 years is too long in the same job. You got to shake things up and keep it fresh. And like, I think there's wisdom to that too, keeping things novel and engaging. So while I was on leave, I made the decision that I was going to finish out the school year and then leave education. Mm-hmm. And so that was when I connected with you and we started working together. And, I had this vision in my head that I was going to end the school year, start applying to jobs, and like be in a new role by the end of summer. Like it would be great. Full-time job with benefits was just out there waiting for me. And I was going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and everything was going to be fine. And then it turned out like that was really hard to do. I filled out lots and
Yeah.
lots and lots of job applications. And I did some
Yeah.
like reluctant networking that you sort of drugged me through because that's very hard for me. and I had some interview processes that I went through, and that was really good practice. And I learned some new skills. I
Yeah.
dabbled in instructional design and taught myself, some of those skills, which was great. It was very tied to what I knew how to do as an educator. And I did some learning in project management, and that's been amazing and super useful because I'm kind of a natural project manager.
Yes,
And
you
now I have some,
are.
yep. Now I have some really structured tools to use for that. But like the full-time job thing just wasn't happening. And that created a lot of anxiety for me.
Yeah.
Uh, so I had to feel my way through that. So I'm gonna go off the path a little bit and say that I was recently listening to a podcast episode of We Can Do Hard Things, which I think
Mm,
you listened to too, right? You're
I do.
familiar with it?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
do.
the actor Dan Levy was on that not
Oh,
long
I
ago.
loved that
Hear that
episode.
one?
Mm,
Me too. And he was talking about a movie that he just made that's about grief, and he had this quote in the episode that I like had to go back and bookmark and pull. And he said, it's not about resolution. It's about loving your way through it. And he was talking about the process of grief, but
yeah.
like, oh, hey, turns out that also encapsulated my job search process. Like it wasn't
Yes.
about resolution. It was
Yeah.
about like feeling through
Yeah.
and like figuring out who I was through it and how to connect with other people through it. And it really became this process as opposed to product
Yes.
situation
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Because it amuses me a little bit
Oh, I'm sure it does.
at how much you're minimizing what you did and what you set out to do. So it wasn't a job search because you and I, we can be totally honest. You could have
Yep.
landed another full-time job at almost any point in time.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you decided, hey, I'm going to bring a little bit of structure in, I'm going to do something part-time at 3 weeks, you started?
Oh, like waiting tables?
No, not waiting tables. Being
the consulting that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like almost at any point in time, you could have taken a role, a full-time role, potentially a role that may have paid a bit more, maybe a bit less, right? So if you were just doing a job search, we would not have needed to spend any time together at all. I mean, I love spending time with you. Obviously, you're amazing.
Right.
And you were changing your definition of success, your definition of security. You were shifting your financial mindset. You were in a hammock. You were allowing yourself to rest and enjoy. Like one of the things, and I've said this to you that just really I find so inspirational and aspirational about your process is that, yes, there was like, oh, feeling my way through this. What is this? And also enjoying like both at the same time, which is, I don't have the word for it right now, but it's not job search.
It's like life search, right? Like meaning search, purpose search. It's all that stuff.
And then you allowed yourself to explore ID, instructional design, and then project management and waiting tables and consulting and being with your daughter and the volunteering with the camp, with the theater camp, and like just so much, yes, anxiety, like you mentioned, but also so much pleasure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the really big pieces that I learned through this process is that like I had very much been raised with the mindset that the single career was the way that you define success, right? You like pick a job, you stay in that field, you maybe stay in that same job for 30 years, right? This is like I had the mindset of a generation before me because that's what my dad had, right? He was the one who worked full time in my house growing up. And I think through this process, we jumped ahead a little bit, but I started cobbling stuff together so I could survive, right?
Yeah.
And in the process of doing that, I found a bunch of different stuff that was cool that I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
and at one point, December maybe, you said to me, you're like, Rebecca, you're self-employed now. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am self-employed.
Well, okay. So with love, that was the first time you heard me
Correct.
because early on you said, it would just be amazing if I could set my own timeline and I could decide who I work with and
Yep.
I could charge different models and I could have all these things. And we went through that whole charging model, which for people who are listening, if you run your own business, you end up with a chart. It's kind of like a 9-box model or 12-box model. If you're lucky, it's a 4 or 6-box model, but most of us aren't that lucky. That you just set up your charge rates. And so you're charging different things and whatever it is that you're doing. And we had already done that exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was like in December, you were like, oh, this is what I'm creating.
Maybe I'm here. Like maybe I'm not still looking, or I am, but like looking is now the constant, right? Like because we're looking for small pieces, not one giant piece.
Yeah. Then to discover like which of these small pieces do you actually want to build out more consistently?
Yes. Absolutely. And I think, one thing I do want to point out that for me was really important, and I don't know that it is for everyone. Like you had asked me very early on, I forget how you asked it, but like, do you want to start a business? Do you want to work for yourself? Something like that. And I was like, hell no, not interested. Because for me, I don't aspire to create something that scales up to a huge thing, So
this you and I bonded and you like helped me like as a human just be like, oh God, that's not what I want to do either. Talk.
Yeah. No, so you and I had a conversation one time, I forget when it was in the journey, where we were talking about this kind of thing. And I said to you, I was like, I'm really happy living a small life. Like, I don't want a huge life. I don't want to be a CEO of anything. I don't want to lead an organization. I don't really want employees. I don't those are not things I aspire to do. I like working with people. I am a good leader, but I don't want the responsibility of having other people's livelihood in my hands. Like, it's not what I want. I don't aspire to it. And so when I think about business owners, that's what I think of. That's what we think of. That's what the world talks about, right? Yes. That's a cultural understanding of what it means to like work for yourself. And I think I had to work through a lot of stages to realize that working for myself could actually just mean like, I'm the whole company, right? Like solopreneur is a thing. And I feel like I had to learn that was a thing because I was envisioning something much grander in scale that I have no interest in whatsoever.
Yes. And I love how these things start because I am a coach, but I'm a coach consultant and I have ridiculous amount of professional experience and I'm not going to let anybody run against the wall. And so I tend to share stories sort of like here on the podcast, but in private, we use names and dates and company names that I don't share on the podcast. Anyways, right as we were starting to work was when I had really made the final complete decision not to create the scaled business. I was in the process of, tearing out a lot of tech, releasing a lot of processes, simplifying and things like that. And that conversation was so impressive because being a person of service to others as a service provider. Now, I have a few people in my business just because of all the cool stuff that we do.
Yeah.
But they all support other businesses as well. That freedom to decide to break free of this ever more. And it's not a business unless you're going for the billion or whatever the new marketing thing is.
Yeah. There's really a piece of me that is kind of at my heart an anti-capitalist. And so I think the idea of being like, no, I shall be a business owner, like feels icky. And so like dealing with that and understanding what it meant for me, right? And how I could own that in a way that felt like it was authentic to who I was and my values was a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it will stay a process, I think.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's actually that's the big lesson is that now I have permission to continue to reevaluate everything all the time.
All the
Like
time.
no longer am I saying, oh, well, I have this nice stability. Like, I don't want to give up my stability. Now I can be like, well, maybe I don't want to give it up and that's fine. And also I have now ripped the rug out from underneath myself and survived. So it turns out like that's a viable option too. It'll be okay. If I do give up the stability for a while, like I'm not gonna go broke. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely have cultivated a mindset of financial scarcity over time that is very real for me and something that I work with, and I'm aware of what parts of it are real and what parts of it aren't real, but like that's ongoing work that I do. And so the process of quitting something that was like a sure thing was hard, and saying like, now I'm going to live off my savings for a while. Like that's scary.
That is scary. Yeah.
Yeah. And like as a single person without another income in the household, like it's another level of scary. Like there isn't an extra cushion,
Yes. And inside of a country, because we both live in the United States, that has essentially no social net that will truly catch you. Yeah. Wow. It's so interesting because having walked this with you, it was really impressive to see you dive into different areas. And now as you're summing it up, I'm like, wow, you did incredibly complex work in a very short period of time. What, 9 months, 10 months?
Yeah.
Very short period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I was thinking the other day and I was like, right now in my life, I have this career that has a lot of breadth to it and not a lot of depth. And I like that. Like, that's interesting. And I'm just a natural curious person and a lifelong learner and that kind of thing. So having my hand in a bunch of different places, like pros and cons, right? But it keeps me engaged and it keeps me interested. And that is nice to have right now. Because I did not have that at the end of my school career.
Yeah.
At my last job. I had been there a long time. I knew the ropes. It was just kind of chugging along and there wasn't a lot of interest and novelty to it anymore. And I think keeping that up is helpful for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to describe it as like, there's a certain part of my brain that needs an itch.
Mm-hmm.
And so, coaching is such a multifaceted engagement. We have the group, we have the one-on-ones, the thoughtfulness of, because sometimes in a session, like I'll be present, you'll be present, we'll be coaching. And then afterwards, I'm like, I completely missed this other aspect of the conversation. I wonder how that can support. But recently I have been feeling such an itch in my brain to do project work. And so I started, because I'm not going to share any specific details for legal reasons, but my last consulting engagement was over a year and a half ago at this point, maybe even 2 years. And I fired them because they were making choices that seemed pretty problematic at best. And that part of my brain was just satisfied. And then I'd say about 4 or 5 months ago, that part of my brain started to itch again. Like, oh, I'd like to be like working on project deliverables inside of a group with other really experienced experts who know a bunch of stuff I don't know and think about stuff I don't think about,
Good learning experience.
And so your cycle also really reflects that, like how deeply curious you are and how quickly and thoroughly you work through new experiences and new skills. Yeah.
I do like learning so much.
You do. And
I'm a giant nerd.
But you also love giving it to other people as well. It's very clear. Like you love being of service to other people as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which brings us to role models for yourself.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So I have 2 brave role models that I'm going to talk about. One of them is my dad, who I mentioned before. And this is such a funny one for me. And I will probably get emotional about this, but if I had chosen to make this career leap while my dad was alive, he would have been very, very uncomfortable with it in worry for me, to the point that I probably wouldn't have done it, to be perfectly honest. Because like I'm a people pleaser. I trust my dad very much in his opinions. And he was a big guide for me as I was growing up. However, having said that, when he was in his late 50s, he lost the job that he had had for probably 30 years with the same company, a very long time. And even though that was ultimately a good thing, like he hadn't been happy there towards the end of his career, it was also like, oh, I'm in my late 50s. Like, what do I do now? I only have, a handful of years left in my career, ageism, super hard, all that kind of stuff. So he took another full-time job briefly for maybe a year or two after that. And then he decided he was going to semi-retire at the age of like 58 or 59. And when he did that, this will sound familiar, but he started cobbling together some different things that made him happy. So weird. A life parallel. So he drove a school bus, and he would like take the sports teams from my high school that I attended, like to their sporting events, which he just liked being with the kids, provided health insurance. It was like, some stability when he was sort of retired and couldn't access that money yet because he wasn't of retirement age. He taught at community college. So he was like teaching the stuff he'd done for 30 years in IT. And he, not for money, but he spent just a crap ton of time in his wood shop, which made him so happy. And I'm just like so grateful that he had the time to do that before he passed away, because he didn't get the retirement that he had planned on. And so like that was a really important role model for me. That specific part of his life, especially where he took that leap, decided that like him being happy was more important than continuing to grind away. So he's one of my role models.
Whew. What a gift.
I know.
What a gift.
It is a gift. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful he wasn't like working a job he hated till he died.
Yeah.
So good. That's so good.
Yeah. And it's another reminder that our kids watch what we do.
They do. They do.
Yeah. And what a free, I mean, I wonder, you started this with like, oh, if he had been here, I probably wouldn't have done this because he would have worried about me. And I wonder now at this point, when you have created this internal stability and security, you are bringing in income and it's just growing. I mean, every group who gets the chance to work with you is like, so how do we keep you for longer? I wonder like how proud he would be that he set that tone for you, and how
I think he would be very glad. And I also know that some of my anxieties about stability come from somewhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so like him watching me go through it, like would have been super uncomfortable at this point, now that we're 10 months or a year in and things are sort of settling and there's a path forward, he'd feel great about it. But like, would he have been real antsy and anxious back in October when I was living off my savings? Like, yes, he would have.
Yeah, definitely.
So, mixed bag.
But, what a gift. Like all humans, right?
Yeah. And then I have another brave role model.
Oh, I'm excited.
I have two. Okay. So my second brave role model is my own child for the following reason. So I grew up in a household where there was not necessarily a ton of room for my emotional experience because there was a lot of stuff going on, over my childhood and growing up. And I was very much the like, overachiever, don't make trouble, do all the things like that. That was my role. And my daughter is one of these humans who is just completely authentic and has all of her feelings on the outside. And it's a very different approach to the way that I was raised and became wired and like exist in the world. And I learn a lot from her about the way that she has her emotional experience. And has it in the world and isn't afraid of what other people think about it and the fact that she's having it. So
Yeah.
she's my other brave role model. I appreciate her bravery in letting her emotions just be what they are. And then she moves through them and then she's okay. And I think that's a cool way to exist and is something that's very different than what I do. So I learn a lot from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and what a wonderful, I mean, so I also have a deeply feeling kiddo,
Yep.
two highly expressive kiddos in different ways. And there is so much bravery required in parenting them in a way that sets them up to continue to be who they are versus the shaping and the carving and the so that they fit into some society that makes most of us unhappy anyways.
Right. I've always, one of the things with parenting or a sensitive kid is that I feel like my responsibility is very much to like put up guardrails and then let her figure out within the guardrails, right? Like there's a lot of freedom of movement as long as we like know where the boundaries are and everything's okay. And so I think that's been a good way for me to think about how we do things in order to like, both teach the things you need to teach to be successful in the world and have the room to be the fullest version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good way to think about it. Yeah. I looking back, I think I had a similar approach. However, I thought of it more as like, how many rules can I actually follow up on?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can never lie. You can never threaten something you won't follow through on.
Right? Right? It was like, okay,
that was actually, I feel like that was the number one classroom management lesson that helped me the most in parenting. Like never threaten something you're not going to follow through on or else you lose all credibility.
Oh yeah. That's so funny. Cause I would say in consulting as a, as a former current consulting, whatever, it was scope appropriately, communicate more often than you think is necessary. Right. So it was like one of the things that's said often in my house now that they're old enough to like repeat it back to me is like, we make bad choices sometimes. We make mistakes sometimes. We fail sometimes. And we don't lie. And yeah, it's such a powerful, like, here are the guardrails, right?
Yeah.
And then in there,
you've got some freedom to work with.
One of my children, decided it was a good idea to climb onto a roof of a friend's house.
Sure. Why not?
Realizing that their house is like our house. The front is one floor, but the back is 3 floors. Like the child just didn't, oh my goodness. And I was like, what's happening? It was like, Mommy, I didn't know. I was like, okay, but at what point in time did climb onto the roof make sense? Okay, so that was just like a bad choice. And thank goodness it didn't become a failure.
Right. A serious one.
Heaven forbid. But yeah, parenting is, I really do, like you, I really look at my children and watch them engage and I see so much bravery. And also, you facilitate a good amount of that with and for your kid as well.
That's the goal, right? I think this generation is going to be the one that saves us. I hope. I have so much hope.
I'm so impressed. I am so impressed. When I have potential sales conversations with like organizations who serve younger kids, they're in their 20s now, but okay, anywho.
Those
youngins. Or, young people in their 20s, I am consistently amazed at the unlearning they've already taken upon themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Or things they just flat rejected from the beginning. Really awe-inspiring, truly.
Yeah. Maybe they'll solve universal health care in America. We can all hope.
We can.
Among other issues.
Among many other issues. Just stunning. Just stunning. Oh my goodness. Was there anything that we didn't touch on? I mean, we talked a lot about, your advice, the story that underpins it, the incredibly sophisticated multi-lever growth you've been on.
Yep.
Talked about your role models.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we missed?
I think one thing that has come up for me recently in a couple of conversations that I think is important for anyone who's considering doing the self-employed solopreneur kind of thing. I went to a networking group thing recently where the woman who was running it said, "Oh yeah, I'm self-employed and sometimes I take on part-time jobs I don't like to make ends meet, and that's okay. That can be part of your journey in self-employment."
Yes.
And I was like, "Oh, someone just gave me permission to
yes.
do a thing and not feel like a failure because it can it's part of the big picture, right?"
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share, this, but your listeners won't. Even though I made the decision to leave the field of education, I'm currently working a part-time school counseling job, and working fewer hours a week is delightful. And I actually enjoy my work again because I've had a little break and I'm not as deep into it as I was before.
Yeah.
I have a much shorter commute for this job, and that really works for me. And it's some really lovely, steady income. And I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence that this has been good for me to do is that I could go into this with a mindset that this is my part-time job. It's not my full-time career. It's not my whole identity. It's not the thing I have to hang my hat on as the title of what I am. And that's been a really important place for me to get to. I can still tap into skills I've done before and things that I'm good at. And like you were saying, pull that lever of a piece of my big picture career without it feeling like that's a backwards move. And so I think that's a really important piece for me, has been important for me. You can build a new role for yourself and also lean on some of your old skills that you have.
Please do.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
right?
Please do.
And you can still count it as forward movement. But I had to get to that. I wasn't ready to feel like I could do that for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm really glad that you got even more specific on that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, we've had different people in our community who, for a variety of reasons, they wanted to, when you said to pay your bills. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And also I live in a new town and I don't know that many people. So I'm going to sling coffee for 4 months.
Yeah.
Because I need that extroverted input, meet lots of people. We have another person who's running for office, right? Another person who took on in the UK. I don't know if it's just England, or it might be the UK. There's a role for, I think it's 2 or 3 hours a week. And parents or community members, it's a paid position, and they can go into a schooling environment all the way up to the university level, and they have a structured implementation role. That's the best that I can describe it, because we don't have anything like this in the US, and it doesn't exist in Germany either. But that was something they were doing because they felt like the work that they were doing was so well compensated, right? And they were working on stressing less, but they also felt super bored and disconnected. And so went and did this additional freelancing gig, right?
Yep.
Allowing ourselves the freedom. I just love how you said that. We have skills. My business is my executive career, but now under my control. I do change management consulting and I do coaching. And I get to decide what that is for my emotions, for my skill build, for my relationship building, and yes, to pay the bills. Because being an entrepreneur, oh man, yesterday, listen, we're recording this in March, early March. Yesterday, I posted to my expert community, so who wants to quit with me? I'm ready to quit. Can we all quit
what?
together?
What are you quitting?
Everything. I just needed I call it micro quitting, where I just quit for a few hours. I'm like, nope, I quit. Everything's too hard. I'm not doing my podcast. I'm not sending emails. I'm not just quit. I just quit. And everybody piled on.
That might be called taking a break, Nicole.
Yeah, no, I just need to be a little more dramatic about it.
You're a little rebellious in that way, right?
A little rebellious. And it was so fun because I woke up this morning because I like posted like, I quit, like this emotional thing.
Yep.
And I woke up this morning, it was like 10 messages of like, oh, go quit today too. And like, I quit for 3 days and I quit for, it was just so fun because we are crafting something that we've been told by society isn't success.
Yeah.
But we're doing it because for us, it is success.
Yes. Yes, 100%. I mean, you said that to me one time. You're redefining what success is. And like at that point, I was doing some part-time consulting with a nonprofit that helps first-gen kids get to college. And I was waiting tables, and like, to be clear, in the house that I grew up in, waiting tables was not success, but like, it was so much fun. And I was meeting people and, like, and it didn't hurt financially, but it, it was just like being able to do those things because I enjoyed them along with the monetary compensation, right? Which is also important. Like, it was great.
Like you were enjoying waiting tables so much that I actually was considering maybe I should wait some. Maybe I would have fun too.
It's really fun
because you're engaging with people. You're having these delightful conversations. There's actually a lot of studies out there that if you're feeling down or you're feeling anxious, 2 short conversations, which is like 3 to 5 minutes, I think, with strangers, fundamentally changes your hormonal releases in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So like being a waitress.
When I was doing a lot of work at home at that point, sitting at my computer and staring at it, like just doing something physical and social was a huge benefit.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, Rebecca, you are a joy. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Oh, all right. This was just so rich. This is going to be so hard to title. Thank you so much.
I think that's my goal in life, is just throw enough things out there that it's hard to pin down. That's what I'm realizing my career is and my life is. Like, it encapsulates many things. I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Brilliant. All right, everyone, until next week, brave it up. Bye. If the Build Your Brave Career podcast is helping you flip the script in your own career, if it's helping you reduce your stress, work smarter, or create more income, please share this with a friend. Till next time, you are already brave. Now go build your brave.